There was a kid we used to play with when we were young. His name was Simon, and he had a strange ability. He could pass through mirrors. We had no idea how he managed to do it, but for him it was the most natural thing in the world. He would just tell us to stand aside, and then he would poke his head through a mirror and climb through it. When he was on the other side, he would turn around and wave at us from the mirror world. Simon was able to step through any mirror, just as easily as if he was walking through a doorway. It worked with any reflective surface. He could hop in and hop out. Whenever he touched something in which he could see his reflection, his fingers would go right through. One day, he sat down at the edge of a puddle and simply lowered his legs into it, as if it was a bottomless pit. He told us all about what it was like to be in the mirror world, how different it was. Everything was much the same. It was just the other way around. Left and right were flipped. He could see people's reflections as they passed by without noticing him. Apparently, if the mirror was smudged, the mirror world would be smudged as well. If the mirror was tilted at a slight angle, the mirror world would be tilted too, and he would have to slide down the floor and then run back uphill to climb out. One day, a guy named Mark invited Simon to his birthday party. Simon entertained everyone by showing off his mirror skills. Eventually, Mark got fed up with him, hogging all the attention. They got into a fight, and Mark chased after him. But of course, Simon jumped through a mirror, and Mark wasn't able to get at him. We all thought it was pretty funny, but then Simon took it too far. He turned towards Mark's reflection in the mirror world and punched him in the mouth. He hit Mark's reflection so hard that he knocked out 3 of his teeth. Mark was fine, of course, but his reflection certainly wasn't. After that, whenever he stood in front of a mirror, he saw his battered reflection with a swollen mouth and missing teeth, and there was nothing he could do to fix it. One day, Mark decided to get his revenge. He cornered Simon down by the beach and dragged him to an old fishing pier. Mark grabbed him by his ankles and held him upside down over the clear surface of the lake. "If you ever do something like that again," Mark threatened, "I swear I will drop you into this lake. I mean it." Simon pleaded for his life and said he was sorry. Mark wasn't actually going to hurt him. He just wanted to give Simon a scare. However, something went wrong. He intended to pull Simon back up, but Mark wasn't as strong as he thought he was. He lost his grip, and Simon fell. He let out a terrified scream as he hit the surface of the lake and disappeared. When Simon didn't come home that night, his parents called the police. They searched for days, but they couldn't find any trace of him. Then, an old man who had been fishing on the beach came forward and told the cops he'd seen Mark drop some screaming kid into the lake. The police arrested Mark, and they dredged the lake for 5 days straight, searching for Simon's corpse. Police divers went down there as well, looking for the body, but they didn't find anything. To this day, nobody has been able to find him. You see, the surface of the lake was like one huge mirror. Mark didn't drop Simon into the lake. He dropped him into the sky. I always found mirrors fascinating, the way they seemed to hold a glimpse into another dimension, a portal to a world just beyond our reach. But after what I experienced, I now know that mirrors can also be a conduit for something far more sinister. It all began when I moved into an old Victorian-era house that had been in my family for generations. The house had a certain charm to it, but there was something unsettling about the antique mirrors that adorned its walls. They were ornate and beautiful, but they seemed to reflect more than just my physical appearance. As the days passed, I started noticing peculiar occurrences whenever I gazed into the mirrors. My reflection seemed to move of its own accord, as if it had a life of its own. My smile would linger a little too long. or my eyes would dart around with a sense of unease, even when I felt perfectly calm. At first, I dismissed it as a mere trick of the mind, a product of an overactive imagination. But as the days turned into weeks, the occurrences became more frequent and unsettling. I felt as if there was a presence lurking just beyond the reflective surface, watching and waiting. One night, unable to shake off the feeling of being observed, I decided to confront the mysterious happenings. Standing before the largest mirror in the house, I stared deeply into my own reflection, determined to understand the source of my unease. As I stared, my reflection's smile twisted into a malevolent grin, and its eyes glinted with an eerie red glow. I stumbled back, my heart pounding in my chest, unable to comprehend what I had just witnessed. It was as if something had taken control of my reflection, revealing a darkness that I never knew existed within me. Terrified and desperate for answers, I sought the help of a local historian, hoping they could shed some light on the strange occurrences in my family's old home. The historian revealed a chilling tale. Centuries ago, a malevolent spirit had been trapped within a mirror by a powerful witch. Legend had it that the spirit could manipulate reflections to torment those who dared to gaze into the cursed mirror. Fearing for my sanity and safety, I decided to remove the mirrors from the walls, hoping it would put an end to the haunting reflections. But as I began removing them, I caught a glimpse of my own reflection in a small hand mirror I had forgotten about. To my horror, my reflection's eyes were soulless, and its mouth moved in a sinister smirk. It mocked my attempt to escape its clutches, taunting me with a voice that sounded both distant and close. I dropped the mirror in shock, but the reflection remained unaffected, its haunting grin unyielding. Desperation consumed me, and I knew that I had to find a way to break the curse once and for all. Guided by the historian's advice, I embarked on a perilous journey to locate the witch's hidden spellbook. Only then could I find the incantation to banish the malevolent spirit from the mirrors. As I delved into the forgotten corners of the house, I could feel the presence of the malevolent spirit growing stronger, its grip on the mirrors tightening with each passing day. The once charming home became a labyrinth of dread, and I could hear eerie whispers echoing through the halls. After what felt like an eternity, I finally stumbled upon the hidden spellbook, tucked away in a long-forgotten attic. With trembling hands, I deciphered the ancient incantation that could break the curse. Armed with the knowledge and a heart filled with resolve, I returned to the mirrors. Standing before the largest one, I recited the incantation, my voice trembling with fear and determination. The mirrors began to vibrate, and the malevolent spirit within them unleashed a final surge of malevolence. As the mirrors shattered into pieces, a haunting wail filled the air, echoing through the house. The malevolent spirit was finally banished, and the mirrors were nothing more than shards of glass. But even though the mirrors were gone, I couldn't shake the feeling that the malevolent spirit still lingered, haunting my memories and lurking in the depths of my mind. The experience left me forever changed, forever haunted by the reflections of dread that I had encountered in the mirrors of my family's old home. I remember when I was a young boy, visiting my grandparents around once a month. My father would drive us out of the city and into the beautiful English countryside. To get there, we had to cross acre upon acre of farmland and trees. I remember the square fields looking like patchwork, like a huge checkered shirt made from earth, wet and grass. My grandparents were a wealthy couple and lived in a huge mansion with what seemed like 100 different rooms of all shapes and sizes. My brothers and I would run from room to room, playing army men. We would jump under the table with our plastic guns and shoot imaginary monsters. Or we would play games of hide and seek that lasted hours. We were allowed in every room of the house, except for one. At the time, I put it down to my grandparents wanting some semblance of privacy. Or maybe it was because my brothers and I would make such a mess, and there were delicate items in the room. I guess, in a funny way, I was kind of right. It started off innocent enough. They asked me kindly not to go in there. Out of the first 7 or 8 times, I didn't. On the day of my 11th birthday, I threw a small party at their house. It was the largest place I could throw a party without my parents having to book somewhere. And despite my grandparents' wealth, my parents were strangely impoverished throughout my upbringing. There was a buffet held in the dining room, consisting mainly of sandwiches and little slices of cake. After we had eaten, we decided to play a game of hide and seek. Seeing as though it was my birthday, I had every intention of winning the game, and given that my grandparents explicitly told everybody that nobody was to go in that one certain room, I knew exactly where to hide. My brother stood facing the front door with his hands over his eyes with slight gaps in his fingers, probably trying to catch a glance at the reflection in the glass. He counted down from 10, and we scattered in every direction, up the stairs and down the halls. Doors swung open and then shut again. I ran up the stairs and counted the doors. 3rd door on the left. This was it. I slowly turned the handle and stepped inside. I closed the door behind me to avoid being seen. The room was pitch black and devoid of even a single window. I fumbled in the dark, looking for a light switch. There was none. This didn't particularly bother me, because although I wasn't fond of the dark, I knew I would only be here until the game was over. So I just sat next to the door. The door opened inwards, so even if somebody did open it to peek inside, they wouldn't see me. After a few minutes, my eyes became adjusted to the dark. The room was pretty much empty. I didn't see what all the fuss was about. Just a few wardrobes and an old mirror. I pulled myself up and stepped towards the mirror. I could see the vague outline of my body through the darkness, though I appeared taller and thinner. I stared into the mirror for a long time. I kept telling myself that I should hide in case my grandparents came in or my friends decided to check the room. But I couldn't. Something was pulling me towards the mirror. There was something strangely comforting about it. It wasn't doing anything special, merely casting a reflection like any mirror on Earth. But staring at it through the darkness had some kind of profound effect on me. I felt wiser for having looked at it. The door swung open. It was my grandfather. "What the hell do you think you are doing?" His eyes were feral and castigating. I stuttered. He stormed in and grabbed me harder than I'd ever been grabbed in my life and pulled me out of the room. He spent the next half hour screaming at me in front of my friends. I remember seeing his angry face through my blurry, crying eyes. I still didn't understand why I wasn't allowed in the room. But if this was what happened when I did, I knew I never wanted to go in there again. Some 15 years later, both my grandparents died. They killed themselves. They both killed themselves within the same year. I had cut off contact with my parents as soon as I was old enough to move out. They were mean-spirited and selfish, and I wanted no part of them. I was left nothing in their will, but I was told that, once my parents had taken what they wanted, that I could take whatever was left. To this day, I don't know what it was that made me go, because there was nothing there that I really wanted. The house was completely barren. My parents must have taken anything that they could sell. I walked around the empty rooms looking for anything either sentimental or valuable I could take. I walked up the stairs and checked every room until I was there. The 3rd door on the left. I opened the door. The wardrobe had been taken, but that didn't matter. That wasn't why I was there. The mirror was still there, caked in dust. Maybe this is why it distorted my reflection so much. There were still no windows, but this time I could see that there used to be windows and that they had been bricked up. The mirror was around 6 foot tall and freestanding, an oval shape. I would have difficulty getting it in my car, but besides that, I was excited to get it home. There was nothing else in the house of interest. Everything had been taken and probably sold by now. By work of some kind of miracle, I got the mirror into my car. When home, I decided to put it up in my bedroom, against the wall at the foot of my bed. It looked good in my room. I had a 4-poster bed, and I guess my room, in general, looked classy and old, and the mirror was a perfect addition. The mirror was old. I was certain, Victorian maybe. But then again, it could have been from caveman days for all I knew. I pondered on the thought for a few seconds, staring into space as I did so. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. It may have been on the periphery of my vision, but I knew that I saw it. My reflection moved. Its head slowly turned towards me and smiled. Its eyes were wide, and its smile was menacing. I shot my head around to look at it directly, but as soon as I did, I returned to normal, and all I could see was my own terrified face. I decided not to dwell on it. I obviously just needed some sleep. So that's what I did. I didn't dream that night, but I sure did sleep. It was like I would never wake up. I did wake up. But in truth, I wish I hadn't. Where once the morning sun would shine upon my face, there was only darkness. I sat upright and looked around. My room was smaller. It may have seemed smaller last night, but I couldn't be sure. This time, there was no denying it. The walls had closed in on my room. The window was missing, replaced with bricks. I reached for my nightstand, but it was gone. I was in pitch blackness. I opened my mouth to scream, but physically couldn't make a sound. I shot out of bed and towards the mirror. By this point, my eyes had adjusted to the darkness. My room was empty except for the mirror. My bed had gone too. I was in it less than a minute ago, but now it was gone. I fumbled for the light switch. It wasn't there. I sat in the darkness, in front of the mirror. Inside the mirror, I could see my room as it used to be. With my bed and nightstand and my window, I could see my reflection sleeping on my bed. I screamed and shouted and swore, but there was silence all around me. I couldn't make a sound. The reflection woke up and got dressed, and then walked over to the mirror. It looked me in the eyes, and I was compelled to look into his. The room was once again filled with light, but then he left, and I was once again plunged into blackness. He returned, holding a comb in his hands, and then light appeared again, and so did a comb. I was holding it in my hands. His eyes once again met mine, and I could do nothing but follow him. His hands moved towards his hair, and so did mine. I tried to fight against it, but I couldn't. In fact, so long as he was looking at me, I could do nothing but mimic his actions. So I stood there, combing my hair. No matter how hard I fought, I could do nothing else. He turned to leave, and I heard my bedroom door close, and I was in the darkness again. And that's when I realized it. He wasn't my reflection. I was his.